Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Myrsiades from Plymouth Township PD in Pennsylvania, 38 years total in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Myrsiades. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Of course, 38 years. It's a long time.
It is a long time. I don't think I'm ready to give it up anytime soon, but seen a lot of changes in 38 years.
What do you think is the secret? I've had a lot of conversations where there are a lot of people who are really looking towards that end date. And, there's that like funny little joke that says the only, two people who know their exit date are cops and inmates, and they're counting down those seconds and minutes to retirement. But you saying that you're not ready to go yet, what's the secret to still having, life left in you 38 years later and still loving the job and wanting to do it?
I still have a passion for this job. I think what it comes down to is I'm a people person and I like dealing with people. It's not a job to me.
Mm.
I like the feeling of being able to help people because that's pretty much all we do all day. It could be as simple as giving directions to somebody. It could be saving somebody's life. But it's nice to be in a position where you actually can help somebody. There's no cost to it, and it does make you feel good when you're successful. I'm actually coming to the end of my time here in Plymouth, but I'm already interviewing for chief's positions in other townships because I just can't see myself stopping anytime soon.
And I think that that's what we all strive for, that you get to the end of this career and you still have that quality of life. You still have life left in you and things left in you to give. And I love that you mentioned the little things. I think our perspective is so powerful and it's so important. And the more gratitude and positivity we look for in even the small things, the better. And for you to say, hey, like, maybe it's giving someone directions and that fills me up. Like that makes me feel good that I'm helping somebody. Someone else could very easily be like, oh, I have to give these people directions, and feel like that's not something that they like to do. But I love that you're like, appreciate the small things. Like even if it's giving someone directions, it could help someone's day to be a little bit better. And for you, it fills you up too. So I think that's great and it's something to strive for.
No, it is nice. And unfortunately, that's not how I started out. And maybe that's the case with most people that are young and brand new. Uh, and you want to be a cop, you want to lock people up. Sometimes you feel self-important, but it took a long time when you actually see the impact you can have on people and you can see what a lot of people go through and how easy it is to make somebody feel good and how easy it is to ruin somebody's day when it's not necessary.
Yeah.
So that comes with a lot of time. So I can't say that's how I started off, but I've certainly learned and changed the way I deal with people. And again, it's a good feeling.
Do you think that that's something that can be taught at an academy or even an agency level, or do you think that that has to be learned, lived experience?
I think for people of my generation, it certainly wouldn't have hurt to learn that in the academy, but I don't know how much credence we gave to the academy once we got out, especially when you're being told, okay, forget everything that you learned. Now I'm going to teach you how to be a real cop. I can tell you that the new generation of officers that I see are different. And I think a lot of it is just because of the way they were raised, that they do have more compassion. I mean, they have different needs than, let's say, somebody of my generation does, that you were just taught to work and stuff your feelings down and keep your mouth shut and just do what you're told. And that's not the case now. But a lot of the good things that come out of that is that we have people with much bigger hearts and that do truly care and come out into this line of work and do want to help. So I see that they've already kind of reached that level already at a very young age, which is nice to see.
Yeah. How are you as a leader adapting to the younger generation? I know you said that it looks different today than it did when you started. And a lot of chiefs agree with that. It's like completely different in not a bad way necessarily, just different, right? And so, as someone who came from a different generation, how are you able to adapt and provide the resources that this younger generation needs?
It's not easy because a lot of these people that I lead are younger than my own kids.
Mm,
So it's difficult to relate. One thing I do is I keep a clear mind. I keep my ears open. I listen to people when they say, "Hey, take a minute and let's talk this over and think about it." Because oftentimes I will react the way I used to think.
mm,
Um, we've had a lot of critical incidents here. Um, Probably the most major one was back in 2012 when we had an officer murdered. But since then, we've had many officer involved shootings, fatalities, hostage situations, um, and it builds up. And the way that you're used to dealing with it is move on to the next call. I mean, legitimately, it's done, and there's still calls being stacked up. There was no thought of take the day off, talk to somebody, have somebody else come in and work the street. Those weren't really considerations when I was on the street. So you have to remind yourself, you have to allow others to remind you. We have to sit, take a step back, and take a good look at this. And I agree with them. They're right, but it's not the first thing that comes to my mind. Now it's gotten a little bit easier, but it was never my first consideration. Is this person truly all right? You might pat them on the shoulder and say, "Hey, you okay?" And they say yes, and you take it for granted that they are okay. When
mm.
that's not how you do it. You really have to give it time and let them decompress and talk to people. So it is a whole different way of thinking.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that popped out to me that you said is that you had the ability to listen and to learn and to adapt. And that is hard for people. I think as we get older, we do kind of fall into our own ways a little bit, and we have our own, way of thinking and operating and doing things, whether that's out of habit or, our training or our preconditioning. But for you to say, hey, I recognize that that isn't my first reaction to do those things, but I was able to listen and to learn and to start having more awareness around it so that I can show up for, the people within the organization and give them the things that they need today, which maybe looks different than it used to.
No, I agree. And I think the biggest reason that I do listen is because I did not like the way things were when I was working for other chiefs. And that's nothing to take away from them. It was pretty much how I saw police work across the board. But just giving orders and expecting them to be obeyed, making a decision, split second decision, even when it wasn't needed or when someone lower than you could have made it was the norm. And I told myself that I'm going to work toward getting this position. And when I do, I'm going to do it differently because I didn't like the way that it was. Um, Police work has started to evolve in the last couple decades, maybe. But before that, we were pretty antiquated, and I'm saying as a profession. Um, so this whole idea of listening to rank and file officers or worrying about the emotions or mental health of police officers is a relatively new idea. It's not something, in fact, it was something that was purposely disregarded. Push your feelings down, do your work, suck it up, be a man. And that's just not realistic. But it took us a long time to get here. And I see a lot of it now, which is terrific. But I think especially some of the older chiefs and older officers are still learning how to do this the right way.
Yeah, I do want to circle back to a couple things that you said earlier, but the first one is you said, you kind of got used to patting someone on the back and being like, "You good?" And they were like, "Yep." And you're like, "Okay," and would kind of take that as truth. And I heard this quote the other day that I really liked, and they said, "Just because you can't see someone's backpack doesn't mean that they're not carrying one." And I was like, wow, because I think we assume that everyone's okay. If we say, "Are you okay? Are you good?" and they say yes, we just kind of assume everyone is okay instead of understanding that we all have backpacks that we're carrying, and some are heavier than others. And it depends on not just what you're going through at work, but what you're going through at home. And so, showing up for each other, understanding that we all are carrying a backpack and that we all, have varying levels of stress and things that we're going through in our lives. And so, I had another chief also say that he just tries to assume that everyone's not okay instead of assuming that everyone is okay. And that worked really well for him, to be able to show up and ask maybe better questions. But I really liked that. Just because you don't see a backpack doesn't mean someone's not carrying one.
No, that's terrific. And the point that you just made, which is always important to remember, is people's personal lives, what they have going on at home. Everybody does have something going on, especially as we get older, with spouses, with kids, with mortgages, with anything that, and as much as maybe back in the day, you'd be told you keep that stuff at home. When you come into work, you concentrate on work. That's not humanly possible. It's in the back of your mind. It affects how you do your job. It affects how you talk to people, how safe you are. So absolutely, that has to be a concern, and absolutely, it has to be addressed. Um, we're dealing with human beings. We're all human beings, and your private life absolutely affects how you do in this profession, and it needs to be, those things need to be addressed.
Yeah. Well, and I think the reverse is also true. Excuse me. Your professional life will impact your personal life. And I have asked that question before, and I've thought about it a lot because people do say leave, work at work and home at home. And I've asked that question, is that possible? And I think that we're really good at compartmentalizing, and, we're really good at trying to like put things in little like storage containers. And I don't think that it's possible to fully shut one thing off. And I agree with you. I think that there are always things that are going to follow us. It has to, like you're going to be thinking about, if you had an argument with your spouse, you're going to be thinking about it at some point in the day at work. It's going to happen. And I love that you said that you're dealing with humans. And I think that's so important to remember, that when we're dealing with humans, we have to understand that there's human emotions and there's human qualities. And how can we recognize those? And, I've had some people even tell me, they're like, they didn't know how to even talk about personal stuff. Even though it was a big part of them, they didn't know how to process the death of a family member when it wasn't work related. How, and this was someone in leadership, like how in leadership can you show up for your people when you just had, one of your loved ones die, but then you have to show up and you have to do this good job. And there's just no way that that's not going to affect the work that you do. So I appreciate you saying that, because I agree. You had said
No, it's
earlier, you said earlier that you guys had gone through a number of events that impacted you guys organizationally. Can you walk us through maybe some of those events and how that has impacted, your approach to wellness and how you show up today? Because one of the first things you said to me when we talked offline was, you're like, wellness is a big deal for us. Like, this is something that is top priority. So can you talk a little bit about the why? Why is it a priority? What are some of those things that impacted the things that you're doing today?
well, besides the fact that we've had some of these incidents, I think the first big incident that I can remember was 2012 when we had an officer murdered, and that was tough on all of us. And a lot of people were affected by that. And there were a few people that weren't able to come back to work. That was the end of their career, and they weren't even directly involved in the incident. So that was certainly telling. But through the years, we've had officers that have had issues, whether one of them was a canine officer who, as his dog was attached to a suspect, he was trying to get it off, and the suspect shot the dog, and the bullet went through the dog and struck the officer in his chest plate. And that whole experience for him, losing his dog, realizing that he got shot in the chest, even though it didn't impact him, but it certainly impacted him emotionally. He was essentially drummed out of our department because he wasn't able to handle it emotionally or mentally. And he was looked upon by the leadership at the time as he was trying to stretch out his off time, that he was, being silly, that he was making up these issues, and his career was over. And there's been many incidents like that, not that we've drummed anybody out, but many incidents like that, officer involved shootings, fatalities, where not only people have to deal with that and their partners have to deal with it, but then it drudges up all the past incidents that we've had. So as they start to build up, you realize the impact it has on people and how important it is, how absolutely necessary it is that we deal with people's emotional and mental well-being, uh, because we depend on our people for so much. You have to be there for them as well. And I guess the first thing is you have to validate what they're going through. You have to admit, absolutely, you have an issue. Even if you don't realize you have an issue, I'm telling you, we're going to have you talk to somebody. We're going to give you time. You're going to decompress, because maybe you're not even admitting it to yourself. So I think it's just been decades of these types of incidents happening. And it's just grown here that we all realize from top to bottom that we have to take our mental health very seriously.
Yeah, I love that you talked about the people and the people being the most valuable asset.
No, absolutely. I mean, again, that's what this whole business is about. If you want to call it a business, it's about people. It's about helping people. It's about we are people that are dealing with the same type of issues. I mean, I remember from my first 6 months of being here so long ago that as soon as I put on a uniform, I was expected to know all these answers. I was going to domestic disputes where people were literally twice my age, and I was expected to tell them what to do or to knock it off, or that I was viewed upon by people that we would arrest with disdain all of a sudden, spitting at my feet, or the way they look at you or they talk at you. So all of a sudden, overnight, you become a different person. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot to deal with. And that absolutely messes with your mentality, the kind of person you become, the stresses that you go under, and it happens like a light switch going off. It's immediate. And there's no preparation for that, or at least there wasn't for me. So it's absolutely important. There's so many different aspects of this job that we need to work on. And it doesn't have to wait until there's a critical incident, because every day that you do this job, uh, it takes a little piece of you, to be quite honest. And we have to be on top of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you think, if we can have these conversations and understand that the people are the most valuable asset, that it's so important to make sure that they have proactive resources and reactive? I think you have to have both. And we understand the stressors and, the trauma and the different things that you can go through on a day-to-day basis, and what cumulative stress and cumulative trauma does to someone over a 20-year career. Why do you think that wellness and training are the first things that tend to get cut out of a budget, and there's nothing left to be able to support the people?
I think some of it is that those that control the purse strings, the budgets, don't completely buy into that. I mean, I've always heard, the catchphrases. It's just like anybody running for office. I support the police. We love our people. They're the best. But it pretty much ends there.
Mm.
I have not seen that in 38 years truly come across. I mean, something as simple as two of our most contested contract negotiations in this department just happened to come at the heels of one of my officers being killed. And then recently, when I had three of my officers, that there was an attempted murder on their lives. So if those words, if those feelings were true, how could you even think of pushing back against them at their greatest time of need?
Yeah.
So I don't think that people truly buy into that. That's one of the biggest reasons I think we need to, because we understand each other, how important it is, and we live this. We don't just do this as a part-time job. This isn't secondary to us. These are our lives. Literally, this is our lives. So we have to make sure, as chiefs, we have to make sure that those things aren't cut, that we fight for these types of things, because it's critical to everything we do. Anything we do is based upon the mental well-being of the people supplying that service.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate your insights on that. And I had someone say, and I've shared this a couple times, but it always stuck with me because I think a lot of agencies, obviously everyone wants the shiny new things. They want the drone programs and the new vehicles and all the high tech equipment and all the things. And I had a chief say to me one time, they're like, "What is it? What is the good of a drone program if you don't have someone to fly the drone?" And I was like, "Wow!" Like that to me, it was like, yeah, like what's the point of having all of that stuff if you don't have people who are well enough to be able to take advantage of those things? If you don't have someone in the seat that is, mentally and physically fit or well to be able to do the job, what is any of that doing for anybody? And so I thought that was a really powerful statement that kind of stuck with me.
No, absolutely, I agree. It's just that it's hard to quantify um, putting out money for mental health, whether that's workout equipment or extra time for people or programs or peer support groups, as opposed to the number of cars and the number of ammunition that you have.
Yeah.
People want to see, what am I getting for my money? Uh, it's difficult. But again, when I took this position as chief, I told myself that I'm going to do it the right way, at least the way I feel that it's right. And if that costs me my job because it doesn't go along with what the uh, the leadership, the township leadership feels, then I'd be willing to walk away from my job. So you really have to be prepared to say it has to be done the right way. I have to fight for the right things. You can't be worried about yourself because that's what's going to be used against you. You
Mhm.
do it our way or we'll find somebody else. And
Yeah.
once you're willing to stand up for that, at least that you can maybe start making some headway.
Yeah. Yeah, I thank you for that. I've heard that there's two types of leaders, but I do want your opinion on leadership and what real leadership looks like to you. But I've heard other people talking about how there are some leaders that just try not to make any noise at all so that they can keep their job, and there's some leaders like you who are like, I'm going to do the right things even if that costs me my job.
Yeah, you know what? I think we all confuse what leader even means. That first group, they aren't leaders; they're bosses, they're managers. Um, a true leader does have to give of himself. A true leader isn't a leader until people decide to follow.
Mm,
So you have to seek buy-in. You have to prove yourself. And the best way to prove yourself is people have to know that you actually care about their well-being, every respect of their well-being. And when they know that you have their best interests at heart, when they truly believe that, then they will follow you. And then you become a leader. I don't look to make all the decisions. In fact, I only make those decisions that I have to at my level. I push everything down to give people the opportunity for growth, to make mistakes, which is okay. I'm still responsible for their mistakes, but that's how an organization works. I should be able to step out the door right now, and this place doesn't skip a beat because everyone knows how to do their job. Everyone knows how to make decisions. Um, those people that are just too impressed with themselves and have to make all the decisions and want to shy away from the hard stuff, that's not a leader.
yeah. One of the things that popped out to me while you were talking is it seems to me that you trust your people.
Oh, I absolutely do. I mean, from day one, I had a plan of how I wanted things to be different. I didn't want them to be the way they always had been. There was a lot of micromanaging. There was a lot of mistreatment in my eyes, not really caring about the people, just wanting things done, wanting numbers, quotas. Uh, I wasn't interested in that. I wanted our people to be healthy. I wanted our people to treat the community in a kind, compassionate way. And quite honestly, the body was starved for that kind of change. So this wasn't anything that I was teaching them. I was really basically getting out of their way and letting them do what they wanted to do, which was to serve, to be, true public servants. And that's what I think of myself, not so much as a law enforcement officer. I think of myself as a public servant,
Mm.
and I love being that. I think that's a good thing to be. Some people use that as a derogatory term, like you're here to serve me. Yes, absolutely, I am. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that the words that we use really matter. The way we present things matters. And for you to say, hey, like, I actually don't like saying law enforcement, like, I like saying public servant. And I think that that's more representative of the work that I'm trying to do within the community. I think that we can all learn a lesson from that. I think that we can take a look at what are the words that we typically use and are they effective? Are we presenting things in the right way? And one of the things you also told me was that you try to give your officers and your employees a voice and, make them feel like they actually have say within the organization. What has been the result of, building that trust, not micromanaging, giving them a voice, allowing them to do their jobs to the best of their ability? Have you seen a shift? I know you said that when you walked in, it felt starved for something like this. Have you seen a shift in morale or, any of those metrics that we're all looking for, reduce sick time, things of that nature?
Absolutely, we've seen a shift. Morale is much better. We've actually developed better, stronger police officers because they feel more confident in their abilities. They've come up with a lot of terrific ideas. I mean, when I have a staff meeting, I make it clear that I don't I won't overrule my lieutenants when they make a decision and they have to control their own divisions of people. But I also use that caveat that I say I expect them to show that same consideration to their sergeants, to let them run their squads the way they see fit, and for the sergeants to allow their officers to operate and work within their confines. And when we see somebody pushing the boundary, we just do a little course correction. We just give a little bit of a counseling session or an explanation or a talk just to make sure that we're not going off course. I'm not big on discipline when it's not needed. I'm more for counseling and explaining and working with. And I think it's worked very well. And these guys have such great ideas. I mean, there's so many people here that are smarter than I am, that have more progressive ideas than I have. Why wouldn't we want to capitalize on that? I have no problem giving credit where credit is due. It just makes us stronger. And truth be told, you want to develop these people so that they can move up or laterally or however they want to, or even just get more out of the position that they're in. And it shows. It absolutely shows.
I love that you said that you want people to succeed and that people are smarter than you, and I think we should want our team to be better than us. And I have, and not necessarily in this, field, but throughout my life I've met a lot of people who think that because other people are successful, that makes them less successful. And they've spent their whole lives trying to like tear everyone else down instead of building them up. And I actually think that when you take the time to build everyone up, and to me, it sounds like you take a mentorship role within the organization, right? Like you're really trying to develop them so that they can be the future leaders of the organization. I think that when you take that mentorship role, I think one, that is leadership. You are reinvesting into the people around you, which makes you better because you learn so much when you help people and you interact and you teach people. You learn different perspectives and you become better. But then the whole team is elevating, and you should want that, and anyone who sits on top of a mountain and tries to tear everyone else down, to me, is not a true leader. And I think that it honestly is a disservice to yourself too, because you're not giving yourself the opportunity to learn new things and to grow. You're just investing your time into seeing everyone else fail. And I understand that it's a competitive, that every career that you're in is competitive. But for me, I would rather build everyone up and still beat them because I'm better than the reverse, and that's always been my mindset, is like, yeah, like I can give everyone everything. I can teach them, I can mentor them, I can help them, I can strive to have them be better than me, and I can still strive to be the best version of myself and still have maybe that competitive nature of like still wanting to beat them anyway, but not because I'm trying to tear them down. I'm actually trying to build them up.
No, I think that's great. I've always looked at my position or many leadership positions almost like a manager on a baseball team.
Mm.
The manager is not even close to being the best hitter or pitcher or fielder. He's out there checking on his people. How you feeling today? What can I do for you? What do you need? Um, I mean, I don't go by any catchy titles, but I think one of the ones I do like the most is when they talk about servant leadership. I mean, you're there for those people, and it's not just what equipment do you need, but what kind of time off do you need? How can I make your lives here better? I mean, I've tried to make this as low stress an environment as possible because we all deal with so much on the outside, and then we have things at home that we bring here. So the last thing I wanted to do is make this a place of doom and gloom that they come into. This should be their safe place, really.
Yeah.
So I'm here for them. They're not here for me. I'm here to make sure that they can do their jobs because, quite honestly, they're the ones that do the heavy lifting. When you call the police at 3 in the morning or on Christmas Day when everybody else is off, they come, not me. So I don't pretend that I'm running this place or I'm providing a secure, safe township. They are, and I'm giving them what they need to do it.
Yeah, I love that. My final question for you is for that younger generation who will be the future leaders of the organization one day. What words of wisdom would you share with them that, maybe you wish you would have known when you were younger?
My biggest thing is don't let this job identify who you are. I did that. It took me a long time to get out of that. And I think I did uh, a lot of harm to myself. I could have had a better relationship with my kids. Not that I didn't have close relationship, but I always put this job as number one. My identity was that of a cop instead of my first identity should have been as a husband and a father. Um, that we can't take ourselves too seriously. It took me a while. It took me till I had been here for 20 plus years easily before I started realizing what's truly important.
Mm.
Like now, to me, my first identity would be as a husband and a grandfather. I mean, I love that type of thing. That comes first. I've foregone important meetings and events to be go to that special person day at my grandson's school. I never would have thought of that as a father. That was unheard of because this was my career and I wanted to get far, and there's so much excitement here and it never stops. You can come in here at 2, 3 in the morning and there's life. There's things going on. But it steals from your soul. It steals. It's not good for you. So you really have to develop a life and enjoy yourself, take care of yourself, and whatever it is that's important to you, it really should be something other than this job. When you come in here, you help other people. But after that, you have to take care of yourself and the people that are important to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate you sharing your insights on wellness and leadership.
Thank you. I had a good time too.
Of course. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.